Is this thing on?
Are you ready, Matt?
You're listening to Box Office Bingers with Matt Diaz and Ernesto Santos.
Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Box Office Bingers.
And the only way that I know how to do it is to find you a bloody good dump.
He's my friend. I don't have friends. I got family. I can do this all day.
You know, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
So now we're going to move over to our Apple TV Plus double feature spoiler review. And we're going to start our first review with Cherry, directed by the Russo brothers, starring Tom Holland. So Ernesto, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts on Cherry?
Overall, I thought it was a great film. It was a little long for me. I felt like it was a little long, sitting at a 2.5-hour runtime. One of the things I really appreciated is how artistically shot it was. Like, there's just certain scenes that it seems like they put a lot of emphasis. Like right in the beginning when Cherry is sitting in the room with his first girlfriend, Madison, I think her name was.
Yeah.
If you look at the shot, it's kind of like a wide, very like Coen Brothers like side profile. She's like super large, and then he's like almost like half the size of the bed, and it just kind of seemed like they were just trying to show that she was the dominant one, he was not. He was a scared weakling, kind of like what the girlfriend mentioned later.
Yeah.
The bank teller in the beginning was faceless. You almost like couldn't really hear her. And it wasn't until like he tried to go rob the bank that she actually became a person. Like it wasn't until that moment that they made it seem like, okay, well, she's nobody, until that one moment almost humanized her, and that's what got him to see her. Anytime he was on drugs, like when he was on Oxy and when he was on ecstasy, like, you see the desaturated film and kind of they were playing with the sound a little bit. Obviously the movie's called Cherry. A lot of it stemming from his nickname. Well, no, I'm sorry, not his nickname. His what the sergeant says to him during his first experience overseas. It was just a bloody mess, and he tells him, "Oh, it's okay. You got your cherry pop today." And it just kind of a notion that your first of many horrors that you're gonna see while you're over here. This film deals a lot with drug abuse and kind of codependency in relationships,
PTSD,
people who are and what that road looked like. Something that stuck. One of the craziest scenes is when he's telling his sergeant, not to go down this path, basically not to do these things, which ultimately leads, they get the Humvee stuck, and it ultimately leads to his best friend at the time being blown up in a car, and that was intense. Like, you see the charred bodies, and one thing I'm very curious about is what kind of research they did as far as like being authentic to what the military experience is over there. It felt like, obviously I don't know, but it seems very intimate. It seems like they put a lot of effort into like what those scenes specifically look like. And I do like the intro, into each part of the film. They kind of just made the screen red and like really labeling out giving each part of the film its due, dealing with that specific issue. Overall, great film. Tom Holland was a standout. It was good. It's a good follow-up for the Russo brothers.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice for a follow-up to the Russo brothers. Like, this is the first time they're direct. Yeah, exactly. Like, you decide to, all right, we just finished directing 3 Marvel movies back to back. We had Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame. And now you've made all the money in the world. What are you going to do next? We're going to do a movie focusing on this subject matter, and we're going to hire Spider-Man to do it. It's an interesting move. You would think that they would just move on to the next big blockbuster, but they wanted to do something else. And it was a hard watch. It really was. Like, there was a lot of serious subject matter, a lot of difficult subject matter to watch, especially when he was like down the drug abuse avenue.
It was very intense. Those are some very intense scenes. I mean, you see, like, especially like really, really taking the time to show the effects of abuse, of what happens when you don't have any. Well, look, they get sick. She's like throwing up and like shitting everywhere, and like how when they get that high, like I don't know, it felt very authentic. It felt very like, and like there were points. It's one of those where I I was fully engrossed. Like I forgot that they were acting. Like I felt like I was really. You almost feel like you're really watching it happen. Like just being real antsy, and like the sweats and the makeup that they used to make them look pale. It was really well done.
It definitely brought you into that world that they wanted you to get.
But it was hard.
It was hard, absolutely. I do think, some movies decide or have the artistic choice to put their movies in chapters, like here's part 1, here's part 2. And I think this movie very much I think it did chapters very well. Like, I think it benefited a lot by breaking this movie up into chapters. Not only because this is a 2 hour running on like 2 hour 20 minutes. I think there was 10 minutes of credits, so it's really 2 hours and 12 minutes. So it's but it felt longer than that.
It did feel long.
Yeah, but I think it helped that it was broken up into chapters. Like and then each part of the film felt like a different part of his life and part of his journey. Like you felt that chapter encompassed the meaning of that part of his life, and then you move on to part 2 and part 3, and I thought it really benefited from the chapters. Like you said before, the cinematography was downright amazing in this movie. It was beautiful. It was like, obviously, like when we are moving into a new chapter, it's the screen is full of red, which I thought it was a great, like, kind of like a bookend or a starting of a next chapter, like visually, as well as the shots. There was a lot of like overhanging shots in the car was very, dynamic. Just the way that they shot the war scenes, how you felt in that environment when they were on, abusing the drugs. And I want to look up this guy's name. Like, this guy has done more stuff. So his name is Newman Thomas Siegel, or Seigel. And, you might have seen his other work. He's also the composer of X-Men 1 and 2 and Days of Future Past. He was also
cinematographer or composer?
I'm sorry, cinematographer. I got music in my brain. Yes, he's the cinematographer for X-Men 1, X-Men 2, and X-Men Days of Future Past. Also the cinematographer for Drive, Jack the Giant Slayer, Bohemian Rhapsody, which just came out. So he was part of that whole Live Aid concert scene. He was in charge of that. Oh, wow. And then he also did Spike Lee's The Five Bloods that came out last year. And probably where the Russos kind of started taking him was he was the cinematographer for Extraction.
Oh, another movie. Well, that's another movie where the cinematography was on point, and that even had like stuntmen who were cinematographers, like jumping on cars and jumping with them in the action. So,
and let's not forget that giant one shot that they had that we couldn't stop talking about either. I'm sure that wasn't easy to in Extraction. Remember that long one shot they had of the fighting scene?
The fight scene.
There you go. So he was responsible for that, and so the Russo brothers produced Extraction. So they probably like, hey, I like your work. I'm gonna take you over here, and you're gonna work on my movie now. Yeah. So that I also love the score, especially in the epilogue. I think the epilogue is one of my favorite scenes in the movie when he goes to jail, and like they tell like a 10-minute story without saying anything. I think they said one word. And the epilogue takes you from the moment he goes to jail to the moment he gets out of jail, and I thought it was told very well. And it was also the music just swelled in certain moments. It was very, well balanced, and I loved it. Henry Jackman was the composer, And he's no shy of working with the Russo brothers. Henry Jackman's also the composer of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and
Great
Captain
score.
America and Civil War. He's also
Another
responsible
great
for that.
score.
He's also the composer for, that's happening right now, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He's composing the entire series. So, yeah, he's fantastic in my book. The Caps theme is amazing. One of the best themes they have in the MCU. And I think he did a great job here too. Tom Holland killed it. That man has range.
And I think that's what's important, because he's involved in another. I've seen. I think it's called Chaos Walking, but he's involved in like these very serious projects. But I think it's important because he doesn't want to get typecasted as, oh, you're the kid who plays Spider-Man.
Exactly.
No, he has way more than that. Kind of very similar to Daniel Radcliffe, what he did after. I mean, he went a whole different route, but
Right.
what he did after Harry Potter.
Well, it's a little bit different because Daniel Radcliffe, he was stuck in that role for 8 movies and 10 years. And so that's all he was doing, and he was also doing that as a child. A little bit lucky for Tom Holland, he was already in movies before Spider-Man, but obviously he blew up when he got Spider-Man. And I think he was also maybe 16, 17 when he got the role too, so he was still a child actor, but not that, young. And
I think it's important. I think he made it an important move in his career to make it that distinction that he can do more than just be Spider-Man and be like a funny kid. He look at this very, very serious role that he.
Oh my God!
That he brought. Right, he brought a lot of justice to it. Like he played it very well. Like his acting was 100% on point.
Yeah, I think he was definitely the best part of the movie. Also, don't forget, he was in Devil All the Time, a movie we reviewed a couple months ago in October.
Another great film.
Yeah, and he was great in it, and he was also playing a very serious role, part of the film. And so I think that was the first time we actually saw him be, him in a very serious role. Like, okay, this guy has range. He can, he's not your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He's also an actor.
But he's more than that.
But he's more than that, yeah. I'm very curious to see him in Chaos Walking with Daisy Ridley. It's currently in theaters right now, but I'm not in any rush to see it. So whenever it comes on a streaming service or maybe through the library, then I'll probably watch it there. But yeah, I'm interested in that. And also, of course, he is Nathan Drake, or young Nathan Drake, in the upcoming Uncharted series.
Whenever that comes out.
Whenever that comes out in 2047 or something. And he's playing like a, pretty much an action star, more or less. Like a funny action star. So it would be probably very similar to Spider-Man, but I don't know, he definitely has range. And so I thought he was fantastic in this film. I thought it was interesting how they took his relationship with Emily. Like, Cherry and Emily's relationship was the through line throughout this whole movie, more or less. And I honestly didn't think it was going to last that long. I thought there were multiple moments where Emily was going to leave and that was going to set him off the deep end. When I saw that she was taking drugs with him, I just felt so sad for her. Like, I felt like that Tom Holland's character was, you saw his path, right? He was a normal kid. He got his heart broken. He joined the army. He made a mistake. He saw terrible things when he was out in war. And now he came back to civilization, dealing with PTSD. Also, you see him, I thought that was weird that sometimes they broke the fourth wall, like they did at the very beginning. And then the breaking the fourth wall wasn't consistent enough for me.
I guess they were just being very selective about when they did it.
Yes.
That's kind of how I took it.
And so you see him going down this road of becoming a drug addict and then eventually, robbing banks to get money to buy drugs. And in nowhere in that story would I would have guessed that his girlfriend was going to follow him along on that journey. Like, I feel like there are a lot of moments, like, even at the very beginning, she's like, I'm moving to Montreal. I thought that was her out. And then he's like, no, I want to be with you. And then they got married. And then when he came back and started acting, started dealing with PTSD, and I thought she couldn't handle it, so I thought she was going to leave then. But then she stuck around, and I thought it was very sad that, I think you can see Tom Holland going into that direction of becoming a drug addict, and in order for her to be on the same level as Tom Holland's character, she needs to do drugs as well, and that's how she got herself into this mess.
That's an interesting point, but I think that ties into what I was kind of touching on earlier, that like kind of also highlighting codependency, because I think she felt guilty about him, because there was that point in the movie where she's like,
"That's right.
I should have never told you I was moving to Montreal, because if I had never said anything, we would still be together, and you never would have went to the army." So it's almost like she has like a sense of guilt where she feels like indebted to him to stick with him and see it through. Thankfully, it worked out in their favor in the end, because she seemed like she was better, and they got back. They're getting back together. One of the strongest parts of the film is when she's in the hospital, and he's like, it's almost like that's the moment where he's caught, like an addict, like trying to lie his way out, until they're like, "Listen, we're just trying to help you. Like, you need to tell us." And then he finally breaks down and tells him about the heroin. And then the mom sits down with him, and she's like, "If you don't walk away, I will fuck you up."
Yeah.
And I totally get that, because if that were my daughter, I would have fucked him up.
Yeah.
And then I would tell him that, if you don't walk away, I will destroy you. Like, I don't think you understand.
And I think you make a good point about codependency, because he did walk away, and then she came back.
Yes.
It looks like she begged. It looks like she broke out of rehab, or maybe she checked herself out of rehab of where she was after her overdose. And she was like, "Look, I'm just going to do it with or without you. So what are you going to do about it? Like, continue doing drugs with or without you." And then they continued doing it.
But
that was the crazy.
She caught him, because it's like, well, like, what does that tell you? It's like, oh, like, if I'm going to do it, and like, I already know if you're still going to do it, like, I feel like logically, the logical thing would be to stay together, because, you're thinking, well, if I want to help her, if I want her in my life, like, the only way I can keep her safe is if I control how much she does with me. It's almost like that. That's the way he tried to justify it in his brain. Obviously, that's not reality, because she wouldn't. I think if they would have split up, she wouldn't have had the access to it, because the only way she got it so often was through him. Now, granted, she could have found another source and whatnot, but that could have taken her down a whole other route of owing somebody else money, and then she doesn't have a second person to help keep her semi-stable. So I felt like he made the right choice in that moment, was to stick with her. Obviously, it worked out in the end.
I guess so. I mean, kind of. He was robbing banks, and he was part of a murder.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't kill his associate, but he definitely didn't take him to the hospital.
Yeah.
And he kind of left.
He saw it as he saw it as a way to cut off his connection with Black. Like, oh, if I kill this guy, then that guy won't bother us anymore. Obviously, he was wrong.
Right. I do feel like that, talking about the runtime and the movie feeling long, I think it could have done without the Black scene. Like, with all the Blacks.
It felt like an unnecessary added character.
Right.
Like we could have heard about him, and the pills and coke guy could have just been, like, he could have just talked about him. Like, we didn't actually need any of that time with him. I mean, besides him throwing the money at him and shit. But that's what ultimately got him caught, was him having to go back and rob for Black.
Well, that's not what got him caught. I think he gave up at that moment. I remember,
that's
like,
right.
he was, because he was like, he had that woman on gunpoint, and she gave him all the money, and then he was like, I need you to do one more thing. I need you to push that button. Like, at some point, and that's how the movie started. Like, it was him about to rob a bank, and then I forgot what was the first words he said in the movie, or what from that moment. I think then it went to a series of flashbacks. So I don't know exactly what he said or how the movie started, but he was saying, like, the moment where you think your life is just over, and I think he felt that. I think he felt that if he got the money to Black, he would never be out of it. He would still be dealing with drugs, and Like I think he realized that he was way in over his head at that moment.
Yeah.
And decided
like you're in a never-ending cycle. Like
exactly.
If I do this for him, and he's right. He's like, if I do this, this is only gonna be there's gonna be a next time. This
right.
You know, I'm an easy access for money for him to just give him money. Like if I just give up now. And I mean, he did. He took one last thing. It was hard to watch him shoot. Shot in his foot. I
actually
track marks in their face. Oh. Jeez.
I actually covered the screen a little bit because I'm like, I don't need to see him stick that in his foot. I'm good. I don't need to see that.
That was pretty intense the way they
shot
that.
It was, yeah. And like, I was like, ugh. And then he just laid in the middle of the street. No, well, more on the sidewalk, but like he was basically accepting his fate.
Correct.
Like, all right. And then kind of in a way, you know, and I'm not trying to like, I feel like we saw, what's the word to use? We saw like a positive thing to come out of the jail system. Like we've seen many stories of people going to jail and having, you know, injustice in jail and wrongfully in prison and all that stuff. But in this particular story, he used jail as a way of a rehab.
Yeah.
He knew that he wasn't going to be connected to drugs. He was able to cancel himself out and the world and have a moment of what's the word, like a better himself.
Yeah,
like
he wanted to hit the reset button on his life, and he knew the only way he could do that was if he gives himself up, serves his time, and then when he comes out, he'll be able to, you know, pick up whatever is left of his life.
Yeah, I mean, how long do you think he was in there for?
I don't know, because they did make him seem older, you know, with the mustache. And
I mean, they tried.
He was like chubby cheek. He kind of looked like he wanted to be Grandpa Cherry. Like that's what
I mean, but he wasn't that old.
They made her look a little old too. Like
I say, they tried. I mean, okay, is it just me or did they just look too young? Like especially his wife Emily, she looked really young. In the movie, like she could pass as a 16-year-old, let alone
the same thing.
Yeah, like I don't know how old she is in real life, but I mean Tom Holland is probably in his early 20s, if that. So like they, you know, his character was believable, but you know her character is like, I don't know, you could still be in high school. I mean just based off of facial features, I can't say anything else. You know.
Well, a quick Google search. Robbery is a second-degree felony, and this is in Florida. A maximum prison sentence of 15 years. But now armed robbery with a weapon, which he did, it makes it a first-degree felony and carries a maximum prison sentence of 30 years. He definitely did not do 30 years. He probably did maybe closer to 10 to 15. Maybe he got off early for good behavior.
It did look like, based on the epilogue, that he kind of, you know, strolled into some like therapy session, that like a therapy class that they all meet up with.
He definitely got out early, you know.
Yeah.
Especially if he shows that he rehabilitated himself.
But also, like, he was then teaching the class.
Yeah.
At some point later in, so obviously a lot of time had passed. But at the end of the day, I also was kind of shocked that his wife was still waiting for him.
It's true love, man.
True love, I guess. I also did not expect that. I'm like, this relationship is gonna die soon, right?
They told each other right from the beginning, you are it for me.
I guess so.
They really held true to that till the very end of the film.
Yeah, I guess so. So, final thoughts, Ernesto.
It's a great film. It's definitely highlight. The cinematography that's probably that and Tom Holland's performance are the highlights of the film. Definitely go check it out.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Tom Holland and the cinematography, definitely the best parts about the movie. It is a hard watch, though. It's a little long.
It's rough.
It's a rough watch, you know, especially when we get into, you know, him off to war. Some of that stuff is pretty intense. And I thought also all the war scenes were pretty well shot as well, as like getting into that atmosphere. I didn't think a really good job of describing basic training, him going out in his first what was it, deployment, or I'm not sure exactly what the term is, but him going to war for the first time, seeing war for the first time.
That's what I'm saying. There was a lot of detail. I mean, it is based off of a book, so
it is.
It's just they spent a lot of detail on the specifics of basic training and like just very detailed accounts of what happened during basic training and what happened overseas.
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job with that. Like I said, it did tend to run a little long, and I do feel like that, especially the parts where it did run long, was like the drug scenes, like that part of that story. I feel like they could have chopped it up and make it a little bit more tighter. I think it would have, I think it would still have the same, effect. But also saying that, with its long run time and split into chapters, it did make those final moments feel like. Yeah, it's almost like after each chapter, I'd like, yeah, I see how you got here. Yeah. Yes, I see how you got here. And so there's some merit to that. But it's definitely an interesting movie. I can't say I'm going to go back and rewatch it anytime soon.
Yeah,
it's not an easy watch.
No.
So
you can appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It can be appreciated, but you don't necessarily need to put it on repeat.
Right. Also, it's definitely not one of the worst movies I've seen this year. It's definitely one of the better ones that we've seen, and that's surprising because it's sitting at a 36% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, they're wrong. It was good.
They did not like the movie. It's also sitting at a 70% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. So I think
that more accurate.
Yeah, I think 70% is a good number for this movie.
I would give it a little bit higher than a 70, but I could see the 70.
Yeah, so there you go. The Russo brothers, they're still doing good. I'm very interested, especially from coming from Endgame to Cherry. Now I'm also interested to see what they do next as well. I think they've also signed on to do a Hercules live action movie for Disney.
Oh, I'm down.
Yes. So they're definitely on that track.
I'm on my way. I can go the distance.
So they definitely have some more interesting movies coming up on their side, and I'm here for it. They gave me Avengers Endgame. They have my money every time they put their names on a movie. Yes. So there you go. That's our spoiler review on Cherry, available on Apple TV+. Hey, thanks for listening to this edited version of our weekly podcast, Box Office Bingers. If you want to hear the full version of all of our episodes, which includes us discussing entertainment news, movie and TV reviews, guest interviews, and other things we've been watching, you can find us on wherever you listen to podcasts.
And if you want more from us, be sure to hit that subscribe button and find us on our social media channels on Instagram at boxoffice_bingers, Facebook at boxofficebingers, email at boxofficebingers@gmail.com, and Matt, we're even on the Tiki-Takis. We're on the Tiki-Takis at Box Office Bingers. Once again, thanks for listening.